welcome back. So for today, I thought we would have some more fun reflecting a bit on how hard it is to do science well, research well, including, mind you, by people that are very experienced and very senior. Maybe you're familiar at least with Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winner, the System 1, System 2 thinking person. Maybe you've heard about this before. He passed, I don't know, a week or two ago, sadly, I think at age 90 or something like that. But he's sort of a very renowned psychologist and economist. And this is probably work that you've heard of before because it's made the rounds on all the popular news outlets for a very long time. The fact that happiness does not increase with income. There's often an argument we make when, recruiting faculty members or whatnot. It's very long.
I don't have to say that even on the most simplified popular psychology news sites, they still simplify it to past 70K.
Past 70K, correct. Yes. So you're right. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. The headline is usually that happiness does not increase with income above 75K.
Yes.
Thank you. That is an important point of precision here. All right. So I thought we would talk about the OG paper, which is this one. We're going to start with Katarina. And then we're going to do the follow-up by Matt Killingsworth, where he's arguing something else. And then we're going to try to make sense of this mess at the end with the last one. So hopefully you've had a chance to at least browse all three of them. The great story of sort of how to do, I think, ultimately how to do science well with the third paper in the series. So please, without further ado, you're gonna come up and tell us or stay there, whatever you want to do.
Can go there. I like the title slide.
Yeah, great meeting there.
It was a good demonstration of what you're talking about. And just to note, this is work from 2010, so from a while ago. Then the second one that we'll see is like closer to our date. And so basically, their main question was if money buys happiness. And to try to answer this, they asked some questions to 450K US residents in 2008 and 2009. They did this through phone calls from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. where they tried to reach people in their homes. And they asked questions about two different things that encapsulate this happiness. So they divide happiness in terms of emotional well-being on one side, where they put the frequency and intensity of experiences of joy, stress, sadness, anger, and affection. And that is one side. And then on the other side, they have life evaluation, which are the thoughts that people have about their life when they think about it. And they evaluate these two in different ways. So for the first one, they asked questions to the people about their experiences on the day before, on yesterday. And the questions were like, did you yesterday experience a lot of feelings of happiness, enjoyment? Did you cry? Did you smile? So these were the kind of actions for the emotional well-being. And then for the life evaluation, they use this scale, Cantrill's self-anchoring scale, where they say that there are 10 steps in a ladder, where the step 0 is a very bad life, like the worst life to yourself, and the 10th is the best life for you. And they ask a question like, on which step of the ladder would you say you personally feel you stand at this time? And so with these two, they try to separate the emotional well-being side from the more general life evaluation side. And after getting all the information, they started doing the analysis with similar steps that we've been seeing across our class. So they did cleanup. Then for the cleanup, they checked for biases, comparing the data that they had with the one in American community survey. And then the 5 different categories for positive effects. So on the emotional well-being side, which are averages of happiness, enjoyment, and frequently smiling and laughing. And then they have the blue effect from the average of worry and sorrow. Separate from this, they counted stress and anger, and then they have the life evaluation as the letter that I mentioned before. And so after getting the results and defining these categories, they started doing some analysis. First, they checked for correlations between all the categories and kept all below all below 0.55. And then for the first results that they had, they tried to compare the number of respondents with the global general poll that they had for the world. And so they tried to measure the values that they had for the averages on each of the values compared to what they had from the Gallup World Poll. And they found that in the US, they are the fifth country in happiness in all world. But then if we say in stress, they are the fifth with more stress in the world ranking. And then they kept doing this kind of correlate, like evaluations of the averages that they got with the averages of other countries. And it's interesting that they are the fifth in happiness when they ask if people were happy, but then in the blue effects, they are the 87 from best in worry and 69 from best in sadness. And then from the Cantrell ladder that about the life evaluation in total, they said that Americans were in the 9th in the world ranking. So comparing in these averages might be a little bit strange, but they tried to do it to get a sense of how Americans feel when compared to other countries. And then they started doing the comparison of effects with demographic features. And so in this they use regression analysis, similarly to what we did. And they had a lot of different variables that they got from the survey, like high income, that they put like, if it's more than 4K, it's considered high income. But then if they were insured, if they were considered old, if they had graduate studies, if they were religious, well, a lot of different things. And their correlation with each of the different categories that they had before, the positive effect, blue effect, stress, and the final ladder. And we could see different things in here, but if we try to focus on two of them, such as the graduates, we can see that there is very little coefficients for both positive effects and blue effects. But there is the stress negative in there, which means that people are more stressed if they have that graduate degrees. And the ladder is it's a little bit upper. And if the previous day was a weekend day, we can see that all of the things are have positive coefficients, sorry. So people are more happy, they are less blue, they have less stress, and the life evaluation doesn't change that much. So this was a comparison that they did, yes.
Why did they do the ratio of coefficient to log income coefficient? Why do they take the log?
That's a good question. I actually do not know the answer.
And
But
also log income coefficient.
Mhm.
Can you take log of negative groups?
It is a coefficient with log income. Like log income is the variable.
Oh, okay.
The response.
yes, log income. And they use log income again in the future. So they use log income in all of them. I actually don't remember if they mentioned why they use log income. I don't know if it's common to use it. We can then check better.
I think so. Plus, it's probably a very skewed distribution. Probably most people have relatively little income, and relatively few people have extremely high levels of income. So logging it helps sort of normalize the shape of that distribution.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
might
but-
be the reason.
But they are also comparing against. They are also doing one regression with a high income, which is binary variable.
Yes. Yeah. Can you remind us what the high income term
Means if someone has an income that is greater than 4,000
per what? Per month? Per week?
per month, I think. Yes, monthly income. And so they did this comparison of the effects with demographic features. And after this, they did try to get a relationship of all of them with emotional well-being and the household income and also the mean ladder. So what we can see in that graphic in there, that plot, is on the x-axis the annual income, and then in the y-axis the fraction of population experience one of the effects. So for the positive effects, not blue, so it's people that did not feel the blue effects. And for the stress fee, we can all see that after that 75 annual income, it starts to become constant. So all of them are logarithmic. And that is the main reason why they found out that emotional well-being stops growing after the 75K. But if we look at the ladder that is there in the middle, it keeps growing with the annual income. So for the conclusions that they had in here, the life evaluation keeps increasing with annual income, but the emotional well-being stops growing after 75K, and now this is annual income. But in both cases, the lack of money brings both emotional misery and low life evaluations, looking at the low income part. And these were the main conclusions that they used to promote the paper, and this is why it is so famous. So this was basically it, what they did in this paper. So they started by dividing emotional well-being and life evaluation into different categories. Then they did a survey with 450K US citizens, dividing the different emotions into different categories. And then they did 3 parts of the analysis, first comparing their average values with their rankings in the world rating, then doing the demographics impact on each of the categories, and then seeing that with more money, the life evaluation increases, but with more income, the emotional well-being keeps growing until the 75K, but then it does not grow anymore after that. But with low income and low life evaluation, you also have lower income or lower emotional well-being. And so this is like the small summary of the paper.
Good question here. You?
What does income mean? Like, does this mean like the income of this person?
So I think they used the
Or
yes,
like,
annual income, but in fact, in some places they use household income. So I'm actually not completely sure if it was just one person's annual income or of the whole house.
Yeah, because I was thinking they should have also control, like how much money does their family already have? Like, if they have a lot of money, but they themselves, maybe or the entire family currently makes a very small amount of money, but they already have a lot of money.
Yeah, so I think they do not know how much money they had before. So they're just like the annual income at the current state. But it might be the household income. I should check. in the paper.
Even without household income,
Mhm.
if the household already has a lot of money, but they are not currently making any money, then that does not count
Yeah.
as household income. That counts as household property. They should. I feel like that would be a nice thing to control.
It could be, but I think the main question in here would be like, should we go for more income jobs to get more happiness and not just like the initial state? But definitely it's a good question. If you grow up already in a family with a lot of income, does that impact having more or having a lot of money? Does that impact the income that you have after?
Did the authors at all speculate or theorize why there's this plateau, and maybe even why it's like around 75K?
I don't think they mentioned the 75K exactly, but the general idea, I think it is that when you have very low income, you'll be worried about a lot of different things. And that does not give you either a good life evaluation, and since you are always worried about, having money for whatever you want, you will also be worried about those things. You might have more anger, less happiness, because you are worried about not having money. I think that was their idea. But then if you're already comfortable, you can still see that your life evaluation will improve. But it doesn't mean that in your day-to-day, you'll be laughing more or less angry at people around you. So I think they try to say that with less income, people are usually more worried about everything. And also their life does not seem as happy. But after a point where they're already comfortable, they are not as unhappy about their everyday things.
That's like what the authors said.
More or less. But they do not talk a lot about it. They focus a lot on the analysis more than trying to explain it a lot, I think, from what I read.
It's interesting because when it comes to money, there's of course diminishing returns at a certain point. But then also as you get a higher salary, you might expect that you're gonna have to work harder because you have a tougher job. So I can see some sort of like parabola effect, but it seems to level out, not get lower. So I don't know, there's just a lot of interesting unknowns.
Yes, they can also not control for everything, right? But they try to do some of that with the demographics, but they only use the demographics, like not how hard your work is. They did not really count for that. Like how many hours, some questions could be, do you do like extra hours at your work? So.
Comment and a question. Comment is your PhD stipends are probably less than this anyway.
Yep.
But that means your happiness can only go up once you graduate. Very exciting.
On average, I feel like I'm.
The good news is, you know,
If we get a job.
if you get a job. But the question, a serious question is, to what extent can we infer this causal relationship here, you know, given the analysis? Could we expect causally that
I think they don't even mention causality in the paper.
you know, doubling your income, say, you know, getting a different job to double your income would increase your happiness or not?
Yeah, I think the next paper will kind of touch it. But from my point of view, from reading this, I actually had one of the questions of like, can we really see the causal relation in here? And after reading it, I'm still not sure that we can. But maybe the next authors will try to unfold what's happening in here.
A
And
big reply, they didn't mention causation is the second paper. They didn't.
they didn't.
Good, so, but you know, the authors are not claiming it, they're
Yeah.
honest about what they can show and cannot show with the data they have. So I think, you know, we should be careful when we are interpreting this. Usually when we are interpreting this and when, I don't know, the media interprets this, the interpretation is causal.
Mhm.
Go quit your job, get a different one that pays twice as much.
Alright.
You know, your happiness may or may not increase depending on where you are on the scale.
Yep.
And you know, they don't have the data here and the design to show that causally. Like, you can maybe expect it, but you need a different design here, maybe an experiment, maybe something else to show that more conclusively. Okay, great, very, very exciting. Looking forward to the next one. Yeah, that one.
Okay, I think guess everyone already know like the second paper is getting an opposite result from the different paper. So this paper, as titled, Experienced Well-being Rises with Income Even Above $75K per year. So yeah, and this paper is the author is Matthew Kilsworth from the University of Pennsylvania and conducted in 2021, which is 11 years later than the previous paper. Okay, so like first in this paper, they're caring about the same well-being, but like they call them in different end. The first is experienced well-being, which is people's feelings during the moments of the life, which equals to the emotional well-being in the first paper presented by Karina. And the second well-being is evaluated well-being, which is another one, the more general well-being, that is people's evaluation of their lives when they pause and reflect. So so the first is a more real-time emotional feeling. The second is a overall feeling about it. So in brief, like this paper, they conclude that like both of this well-being will increase linearly with log income. And there's no evidence for an experienced well-being or emotional well-being plateau above 75,000 years. So how they do that? So first, it's the same, like we come up from the data. So this paper, they primarily care about the experienced well-being. So they do the data collection specifically for this goal. They get more than 1 million experience sampling reports from more than 33,000 employed US adults through the mobile phone reports. It's not like the phone call interviews, it's from the mobile phone reports. And it has the following 4 advantages. First, it's measured in real time, because like the past research is like through the phone call, and it will ask question about like, okay, how do you feel yesterday, or how do you feel last weekend? So it lets the participant to remembering what they feel at the previous moment, which way have the errors of memory. So by applying the mobile phone reports, like they avoid such kind of errors of memory. So it lets the participant to measure, to record how they feel in real time. The second advantage is that they measured on the continuous scale, which I will discuss later. The third one is that they invite each person to join a period of experiment. Like during the period of experiment, each person will submit dozens of reports of how they feel at a certain moment, which can like provide, so basically for each person, they provide dozens of separate occasions, which can give a less noisy estimation of their experienced well-being. And the final advantage is that he say that he's include a large number of high-earning participants, which can balancing the distribution of the income to make sure that there's no bias in the final result. Okay, with this data, they do the regression analysis. So a quick glance of the result. As you can look in here, here is a plot between the, what happened?
Try wiggling the HDMI cable.
Okay.
Yeah, that may work. Let's see if the Zoom thing is still sharing. Oops. Oh, maybe we stepped on the thing by accident.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
We're not sharing anymore.
Is it? Oh, yeah, it's on.
It's on this one. And we are sharing.
Yeah, we're sharing. Okay, so this is a plot of the relation between the household income. This is already goes with the log and with the well-being. And the blue curve is the one we care about, which is the emotional or experienced well-being. And as you can observe, the shape looks like linear. There's no plateau for the experienced well-being. And it's also no obvious change in the slope before and after 75K per year. Question?
You said it's log household.
Yeah, it's the same with the previous study.
But here, like log, if the log is like 480,000, then the real income is what?
It's just log scale.
Yeah, it's a log scale, yeah, so so from 4,800K to
Oh, okay,
24, sorry. It's two times, it's two times. Yes. And but that's all, so that's the observation. However, to formally showing that, they use a regression with the interaction term between the log income with the income category, which is what we did in class. There's one flag to indicate whether the person's income is above or below 80,000 K. Okay, this is one very interesting point that this is using 80,000 K here, but not 75 K per year. The author only mentioned 80 K is a greater boundary of 75 K, but didn't explain too much why they did that. But personally, from the result, I understand it didn't matter a lot. So okay, so just ignore it. So so by doing the regression result, you can see the orange word is he find that like the slope for the blue curve before 80K is 0.109 and above 80K is 0.110, which is very close and cannot show me that there's an obvious change in the slope before and after 80K per year. So basically he's saying that like
Is that you?
I just end. Yeah, sorry about it.
No worries.
And
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
And presumably the p-value is very low for it?
yeah, the p-value is very low. Like this data in the paper is a very low p-value. So
Or I should say high, right?
low
Yeah.
p-value. So
Oh,
it's
low.
statistically significant.
It's statistically significant.
Yeah, very statistically significant result. Yeah.
So there is a
that's
difference. Okay.
Yeah, so basically, this is the main result of the paper, and he's claiming that there's no plateau, the income threshold around 75K, which will block the effect of income, larger income on the experience well-being. So there's no such threshold. This is what the author is claiming.
But then the p-value, like then the p-value for the income category should be very high, right? Because there's no difference between the two categories.
This is a very little difference. Yeah, you're right.
In slope, so.
In slope, yeah,
Yeah.
in slope. Thank you for it.
So we're talking about, oh, plus it again?
Yeah, the coefficient for the interaction term.
Right. But just on this point again. Yeah, you may need to share again, I think, possibly. Yeah,
Yes.
yes, that should work.
Okay, it's sharing. Okay,
Right, so one clarification here, the slopes are probably statistically significantly different in the sense that, you know, there's so much data here, millions of observations, that of course it's very easy to get statistical significance, you know, over so many observations, just huge sample. But if you actually look and, you know, interpret the actual coefficients and the slopes, you see that they're practically identical. So, you know, the difference is not meaningful, even if it's statistically significant, it's not actually meaningful, right? It's essentially the same, right? So a third decimal difference makes no difference. And this is sort of irrespective of whether or not there's a change in level at the intervention itself. That's a separate story.
yeah, so that's their finding, but the author do much more than that. So in the paper, the author also studied two more questions. The first is that, oh no, again, I didn't touch anything.
This is
Okay.
very, very annoying. Not your fault, but I don't know. Let's try something else. Let's try and move the cable around the back or something. Maybe that helps. No idea. We move the cable forwards a bit. Ah. Okay. By that.
Reconnect again.
Reconnect again. It's here. Just stuck. This in. Maybe you can like first time to charge. Keep that.
Okay. Finally. Okay, so so just now, I just talked about the relation between the household income with the experience well-being. However, experience well-being, like it's a overall feeling of the emotion, like but emotion, like there's different kind of emotion, like the positive emotion, like happy, proud, or also negative emotion, like sad, angry. So the author also wondering like how the larger income associated with this concrete negative or positive emotions. Whether so we observe that the experienced well-being is getting higher as the income is getting larger. But does that mean like also the negative feeling is getting is decreasing, or does that mean like the positive feeling is getting more when you get higher income? So basically he want to study that. And the second question, and the author want to study like why the income is associated with well-being. But due to time limit, I will only focus on the first one. So as I mentioned, so here the author in the data, the author collect the information about 12 individual feelings. 5 of them are positive feelings: confident, good, inspired, interested, and proud. And 7 are negative feelings: afraid, angry, bad, or sad, stressed, and upset. And he fits 12 different regression between he accessed the association between the log income with this 12 feelings separately, and here the slot and got 12 slot for each of them. And very interestingly, if we would look at the green box, which is the 5 positive feelings, we find that all 5 slots are positive, which means that larger income associated with his higher positive feelings. At the same time, look at the red box, all the negative feelings has a negative slot, which means that larger income is associated with lower negative feelings. So like so basically when you have larger income, you got better positive feeling as well as less negative feelings at the same time. All of these slots are statistically significant. But the author also care about the whether what does the income above or below 80K affect this effect. So he adds this term into the regression model. Interestingly, still like all the positive feelings all have a positive slope with the income, no matter it is below 80K or above 80K. And if you look at the green box terms, confident, good, inspired, and interested, you will find out like if the person had the income above 80K, the slot is getting bigger. The confidence increased from 1.47 to 2.867. So to be more specific, like all 4 terms increased more than 50%. Only one thing decreased. But overall, the slope will increase after 80K by 20%. And we can, yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you know how evenly split the population is above and below 80,000?
I would a quick answer. I didn't include in my slides, but the author say that the data they used match the distribution of US income.
Oh, interesting.
So basically claim that the data set is representative.
So presumably a lot fewer people above.
Yeah, it's like a normal distribution, just as the US people income.
Because US people income media is maybe 60 or something.
Yeah. So it just match that distribution.
Wait, I thought people's incomes weren't normally distributed, or are they?
What?
Is people's income normally distributed?
Yes, I think so.
Maybe log normally distributed.
Yeah, log normally distribution. Yeah. There's one picture in the paper. It's just like a normal distribution. Yeah, and the author is claiming that his data set is representative because like the distribution, the data they collected, the income distribution is quite similar to the US income distribution. Any other clarification? Question? No? Okay, so this is about positive feeling. So basically about the positive feeling, the authors say that larger incomes for higher earners disproportionately increase positive feelings. And very interestingly, for the negative feeling, it showed opposite. So first of all the negative feelings have a negative slope with the income, no matter the income is below 80K or above 80K. However, most of them have a bigger slope, bigger magnitude of slope when the person has the income below 80K, which means that the larger incomes for lower earners can reduce more negative feelings. It's more significant for the lower earners. However, in the two results I shown to you, most of these differences were not statistically significant on their own. So, but here, the author did a very smart further analyze that he compare over positive and over negative feelings to prove his statement. So before, I showed the single feeling, the relation of the income with a single feeling when considering the income category, which is whether the person has the income above or below 80K. But now he considers the overall positive or negative feeling. So no matter, he didn't care the single feeling anymore. He just treat every feeling as a feeling. And he get one more term, it's a three-way interaction. One more term is the feeling balance, which was indicating whether this feeling is positive or negative. By doing this three-way interaction regression model, he finds three terms are statistically significant. First is a log income, which means higher income has higher, better feeling. Yeah, and it's the binary indicator of whether the feeling is positive or negative. And finally, it's a three-way interaction term between the log income category, and the feeling balance. I find it's really hard to interpret the three-way interaction because I know how to interpret the two-way interaction, but for three-way, it's really hard. But I summarize what the author wants to say. So basically, he said that from the three-way interaction term, we can interpret it that when the people for the low earner, which is have less than 80K per year. Okay. Actually, this is a typo error. The first line is negative and second line is positive. So basically, he's saying that for the low earner with income less than 80K, the negative feeling will decrease more when he have larger income, and for the person with a high income greater than 80K, the positive feeling will increase more when they have larger income.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. This one is correct. This one is wrong. The order of the negative feeling. So, and he have a potential explanation for this. So his explanation is that low earners have many avoidable sources of suffering, but as one earns more, there are fewer sources of suffering whose avoidance can be purchased. So that's explain why the negative feeling will decrease more when people has less income. Oh, when people earn less than 80K, but when they have larger income. And in contrast, positive feelings rose more evenly across the entire income range and even have a directional steeper association with the income above 80K. Basically, it's saying when people have, for high earning person, when they earn more, the positive feeling is getting increased more. No more the negative, no more decrease the negative feeling, but it care more about the positive feelings. Okay, so so the result based so this paper getting an opposite result with the previous study, and the author want to like explain why the current result might different from the past. So the most straightforward reason the author conclude is a scale. So in the past study, the researchers use a binary measure of their experimental experience well-being, which left no room left for the improvement. So from the data, so for the data set as shown in the previous study, like for the people who earn less than 75K, there's already more than 70% of people choose the highest level of the experienced well-being, which is already a very high percentage. And in the contrast, when they earn for the group who earn more than 75K, this is only just more than 80% of people choose highest level. It's not too much difference, not too much improvement between these two groups. And he say it is because the reason of the measure. However, in the current study, he used a continuous scale, which is no more just an option, and he used a multiple measurement for each person. In only 5.5% of the response as a response ceiling, and less than 0.5% people ever choose the response ceiling, which give much more room left for the improvement. Yeah, so basically it's because the scale. The previous study, the scale already limited the improvement of the experienced well-being. However, like the current study give more using continuous scale, and lets the people choose a higher experienced well-being. So overall, the takeaways: larger incomes were robustly associated with greater well-being, and it's about the both well-being, the experience well-being and the evaluated well-being. And there's no evidence for plateau around 75K, with experience well-being instead continue to climb across income range. And there's no income threshold at which experienced and evaluated well-being will diverge. Questions?
So a few slides ago, you talked about how.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so a few slides ago, you talked about how the slope got larger for the positive ones.
Yeah.
Right. That seemed a little interesting to me because this is all based on a log income, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So did the authors take into account the fact that logs get larger as numbers get larger? Like, could the increase in percent not be attributed to the fact that as the numbers get large, as the incomes get larger, the numbers get much larger, right?
Yeah, I agree. The author didn't think in that way because I think he just used the log income, which is very common in such kind of study. So he didn't explain like what's the effect of log. Everyone knows that like when log income will get a much higher income, a constant increase in the income like didn't change a lot, but yeah, but I think like it's a very standard way to do that. But I think your question is reasonable.
Thanks.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah, beside that, like, personally, I do think his explanation is quite makes sense to me. Like, for people earning less, having more income will first decrease their negative feeling, and then when they earn enough, the positive feeling will be affected more. I think very intuitive. But this didn't get a causality relation between them.
Is there a choice about the natural feeling besides the positive and negative?
Sorry?
I mean, besides the positive feelings and the negative feelings, I think there will be some natural feeling.
Oh, he didn't mention, yeah. He didn't mention, I don't know about that.
Okay.
He simply classified the feelings into the negative and positive, and he only studied. I think he hypothesized that the negative feeling and the positive feeling are affected by the increase in the household income.
So the final result is more money with that.
Yeah, basically more money, people feel more happy and less uncomfortable.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, very exciting. So two things that are very exciting. Number one, both the previous one and this one, you could have done all of this with what we discussed in this class. So start to end. Like, you know how to run surveys and analyze them. We've gone over exactly the same statistics that they have used. That's pretty good. You can go off and do similar things and get published in, PNAS and whatever else up-tier journals. And you have now all the methods chops to do all of this. I think there wasn't anything in here that was surprising, I think. Maybe the three-way interaction was a bit unorthodox, but you can get the gist of that, I think. But that's good. Good news. Second, how can both of these things be true at the same time? How is that possible? Or are they? Here they are again, side by side. Left-hand side is the first paper with the plateau around 80K. Right-hand side is the Killingsworth paper with just linear increase with log income. Kai.
I guess in the second paper, they mentioned that the main differences being the repeated measures over time and the scales having a higher scaling. Like, I guess that would sort of make the sort of like log or like curve we see in A, if the scale is like truncated to half of what it could be or something like that, and everyone starts choosing like 5 out of 5, then like there's no way to differentiate past 75K with that scale.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll revisit this in a second, but you're absolutely right. Long.
The other thing I saw in the third paper was that Kahneman and Deaton didn't break apart their participants into several groups, and then there's a particularly unhappy group whose unhappiness decreases, but when their income increases, but it doesn't decrease beyond that point. But there's there's other subgroups where that's not true.
Yeah, and I think this is related to the ceiling effect, so we'll dive into this in a second. Let's see what else, thoughts on what you've seen so far, if anything else. I guess the beauty of the story to me was that, as it turns out, they were both right. Just sort of really, I think makes for a good story. Usually, there's some poorly done study that gets debunked or whatever else in follow-up work, but that's not the case at all. Both sets of authors here, turns out, were right at the same time, even though these two seemingly contradictory conclusions, these two conclusions are seemingly contradictory. They seem like they cannot both be true at the same time. It's a great story to me. All right, so let's go into it a bit. Maybe we start here.
Actually, can I take a guess?
Yeah, of course.
This is just a total guess. But maybe the one on the left seems like it's more talking in aggregate, and the one on the right, there seem to be a lot of different variables. So maybe it's controlling for more things. I don't know. Maybe one of them is controlling for more, and it's an example of Simpson's paradox. It's just my guess.
Okay, cool. That's a good point. Although the first one was controlling for all kinds of things, it's controlling for religion and gender and weekend and a bunch of other things. But I do take your other point, the point that look, maybe the fact that you have this repeated measure that's more precise, it's a pop-up on your phone that asks you how you're feeling at that time, and it's averaged over many instances for every single respondent. Kind of removes a lot of the noise in that measurement. Maybe the measure by itself is just a much better measure. Good intuition, but turns out no, that's not the case. Turns out both measures are okay measures. This one's better, I agree. The more precise one is better, but that's not the main source of the disagreement here. The main source was indeed the ceiling effect that Kyle was talking about. So let me try to illustrate this. Remember what they measured, okay, in the original study. They measured 3 positive effect things: happiness, enjoyment, and frequent smiling and laughter. Happiness, enjoyment, frequent smiling, and laughter, I guess, together. So the average of 3 positive things, that was the positive effect. And then the average of 2 negative things, and that was the blue, whatever, the blue effect. Right? And the score you saw there, the effect was, this plateau effect was present in both, right? So, if you look at the average of the positive things, it plateaus. If you look at the average of negative things, it plateaus. So you don't get increasingly more unhappy, and also you don't get increasingly more happy. And the catch, and I think you talked about this already in a Killingsworth paper. The catch is that turns out either one of these is actually not a good measure of happiness as much as it is a good measure of unhappiness. So the example they give is some cognitive impairment test that, I don't know, they ask seniors to take or something. Usually, the way these tests are designed is most everybody scores perfectly unless you have some sort of impairment, and then you start being able to detect that. Like you sort of start scoring, making mistakes and whatnot on that test, the more impaired your cognitive function is. But otherwise, the test is really not able to differentiate between levels of normal function. Because most everybody scores the maximum possible score on that scale. And you talked about this already, I think, and when we're presenting the Killingsworth paper. That happens to be the case here as well. Most everybody, 80% plus, of their respondents, I think, score the highest on both of these. They're just perfectly happy. 80% or more of the respondents are just perfectly happy. Or, I don't know, perfectly not unhappy. There's really no variance there in the data. You can't really learn much. You can make claims about the people that are happy, so much as you can make claims about people that are unhappy. You know, the test is able to detect the cognitive impairment example. The test is able to detect people with cognitive impairment. And similarly here, the scale is able to detect maybe people that are unhappy, but it's not able to detect, it does not have enough resolution among the people that are just happy to distinguish between levels of happiness. So that's really the key to the argument for why this is happening. Right?
So recently I had this sort of debate with myself because I had like a mental well-being part of my survey that I'm doing. And I ended up putting a scale for positive mental health in because the people in that paper had said that most people focus on negative mental health scales for that. I guess I'm wondering, are there good, like, do you always have to make this kind of trade-off, or are there good like bivalent scales that can distinguish both sorts of reactions, like even beyond like mental well-being?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I don't know this area enough to know what instruments are available. You know, this is a good example illustrating that they're not equivalent. But I wouldn't be able to point you to one that you should use, unfortunately, in your work right now.
When you ask questions in your survey, do you usually assume that like a lower number equals less of something, or do you frame it in terms of like what you asked? I guess.
I don't know if I fully follow.
Yeah, I guess would asking questions in a bipolar way, like to what degree do you agree or disagree with this statement, like sort of get around this problem of only having good clarity on one end of the scale?
I don't think so. It will depend on what exactly you're asking about. If you're not asking about I don't know. I'm getting confused now. I don't know.
Okay.
Short is I don't know. My intuition is no, that it wouldn't solve this, but I don't know if I can explain it.
I wish I had a buzzword, but I'll look for it.
Seeding effects is the technical term here for scales. Yeah, for survey instruments. Okay, so now let me show you the $1 million result here. So to illustrate what was happening, they have broken down this relationship, income on the x-axis by happiness on the y-axis. They've broken down the different percentiles of this distribution. So we're still plotting happiness as a measure of income, or log income rather, like before. Okay. But in each of these plots, we're showing only the 50, so here we're showing the 15th percentile, so the bottom of the happiness values. Here we're showing the 30th percentile and so on, 50th percentile, etc. Okay. So we're breaking down this relationship between happiness and income. Okay. So here you could see that among the most unhappy or the least happy people, there is a plateau effect for income. Above, I don't know, 100K-ish, happiness does not increase with income, which is exactly the original paper result. But side note, this is all the same data from Killingsworth. No, nothing different. It's just a reanalysis of the Killingsworth data. I forgot to mention that. That's for you. So they're doing this interrupted time series regression again, and they're showing that this slope is not statistically significantly different from zero. We can't really tell that it's increasing or decreasing. It's basically indistinguishable from flat here, which means plateau. Okay. In the middle of this distribution, you see exactly the Killingsworth result. If you look at the 30th percentile, the 50th, you basically see this linear and more or less uninterrupted trend. But happiness increases linearly more or less with log income, which was the main Killingsworth result from before. Okay. Now the catch is, for this to be true, which was the main Killingsworth result from before, and that thing to be true, which was the original Kahneman-Deaton result from earlier, then you need the top thing to be true. Okay? The top thing is the mirrored opposite of the bottom. But you need these two things to cancel each other out to give you this average effect. Right? So interestingly, if you look at the happiest people, this top 70th percentile or the top 85th percentile, if you look at those people, happiness increases more with income above the magical threshold. And so they get even happier, okay, which is amazing. So basically a case, for your next job to, double your salaries or something, assuming you're already very happy. Does this make sense? This is the main, whatever, follow-up paper results. Yeah.
Is it the happiest people for like some what am I trying to say? Like normalized for your income? Because if you just look at the happiest people, right, it's going to be at the top right corner. So I guess I'm just a little bit confused about the y-axis.
Yeah. So the happiness score is that thing from Killingsworth. There's this continuous happiness variable.
Yeah.
And in each of these, we're taking, say, the top 85th most happy people.
But is it like per rectangle? Is it?
So these happen to be the people, that score, 75 or above on the happiness scale. That's the 85th percentile of the distribution of happiness scores.
But if it was just the 85th percentile, then wouldn't you not have everyone in the red, for example?
Hold on. These people here are the people scoring about 75-ish on happiness. Right? We just take everybody, we break down, we have a sample of people, right? 1.5 million or something. Here we're taking a subset of those that scored the highest on happiness. Make sense? And among that subsample, we're plotting the distribution of income.
I see.
Right? So we have said nothing about their income. We've only sampled on the outcome, on happiness. We've said nothing about their income. There can still be variance in income, right? Some of them could be very poor, some of them could be very rich, there could be anything in between. And this is the shape of that relationship for this subsample.
Okay, so I see. So you're getting rid of like a lot of points in between 85th and 70th percentile. Like you're not,
You could do this for, any value here, it doesn't matter, this is for illustration purposes. You could go and, 1 percentile increments or whatever. Right, if you want to be more precise.
okay, I see what's going on now.
The idea is that, the ones that are not shown in between will likely be interpolations of the ones that are shown.
Right, okay. Gotcha. So it's all one graph. I didn't get that at first.
Right. Yeah, that's important, thank you for clarification.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
As a graph?
now that's it.
Yeah, okay. Isn't that amazing? That, if you're already happy, more money brings you disproportionately more happiness. Isn't that wild? By the way, more money is hard to get here because more money means doubling your income on the x-axis. So maybe you can do this a couple of times, maybe going from grad student to, I don't know, your first job post-graduation would easily double your income. But it's going to be harder to sort of keep doubling your income with every new job or promotion, right? For that. I think cool. And the other thing that's cool about this is if you read the paper, it's sort of very interesting. They talk about how that's the I don't know what happened to the other author, something Deaton, Kahneman. Deaton was the original, the Matt Killingsworth. The third person here is a neutral arbiter that they appointed. So the two sets of authors basically couldn't see eye to eye. Right? Each thought the other one was wrong, right? So they couldn't reconcile their differences, and they appointed this neutral arbiter to mediate this disagreement between them. Right? The paper talks about how that was necessary and so on.
Adversarial collaboration.
Right. Adversarial collaboration. Right? They ended up writing this follow-up paper with all of them and explaining their lessons learned. It's a really fascinating story of how to do science right. More commonly is, follow-up work comes out and talks very, negatively about the original authors and so on. And people never actually talk to each other and try to resolve their differences. They just talk, I don't know, at each other, basically. Past each other. That was a really nice example.
Some people in the field have said.
Yes.
Oh, that said, the very last paragraph of the paper says, finally, we must also note that we benefited from luck. The close correspondence that we found between the KD and the MK studies is a better result than social scientists can reasonably expect, even when their hypotheses are correct.
Yeah.
So I guess our mileage may vary.
Yes, your mind has been very, yeah. But I thought it was a really nice example of how to be collegial and collaborative and sort of constructive, even when you disagree. Writing a piece together about the root cause of your disagreement is a nice way of doing this. They have this really nice section, errors and their origins. This here, where they tell the story of the ceiling effect thing that I mentioned, and so how that prevented the original authors from observing this continued growth in happiness with log income that Killingsworth reported. Right, so the ceiling effect prevented Kahneman and Deaton from seeing that past 75K because of their scale. And I forget what else, something in Killingsworth that prevented him from seeing the plateau in this lower end of the happiness distribution. So that's basically it. Yeah. What do you think?
It's very nice. I heard time and money are fungible. Maybe time makes you happy.
You could do a study.
And call like 1 million people on the phone.
Yeah.
then you're taking away your own,
Yeah.
which is taking away your own.
Well, if it's by my own agency, maybe it's something that's making me happy. It's something that I choose to do.
By the way, speaking of this, the other thing that was interesting, worth mentioning. I think you had this. Yes, you did have this. If you look at the size of these coefficients, you can see that basically all of these effects are small. So, you know, doubling, even if this were causal, doubling your income only gives you relatively little increase in happiness on these scales. And you know, doubling your income by itself is quite hard to do in the first place, at least more than once. Right? So you know, take this with a grain of salt, right? It's unlikely that you will be exponentially happier, I think, with more income, but certainly it cannot hurt. Yeah.
Is there a broader theory for why we have this weird effect when you make more than $80,000? It's like saying if you're not that happy, go make $80,000. You'll probably be.
I think it's the thing you mentioned, or both of you mentioned. You know, just have all of these basic needs that are just unsatisfied, which make you unhappy in the first place. So once you satisfy those, like I don't know, a shelter and food and these very basic things.
If you're okay, I see. If you're not that happy to begin with, then more money is not going to make you much more happy. Once you reach the threshold, 80,000.
Right, because maybe.
So it's more a product of how happy you are as a human being, more than anything else.
Yeah, it's a good question. Do they say much about the plateau effect in the lower end? I don't know if they do. Yeah,